You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hey there. So today we are going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, boundaries. Now, listen, I am not going to lie to you, and I love keeping it real with you. Boundaries are hard. They kind of suck. They're difficult to implement. I still have to implement boundaries, and every time I'm like, oh, really? Do I really have to say no? Or I'm going to upset this person, or I'm going to ruffle some feathers. Why do I have to say anything at all? But here's the deal. Boundaries really honor who we are, our morals and values, and what we're okay with and what we're not okay with. And particularly when you love someone suffering from addiction, boundaries is one of the top 3 tools you need to master. Because I bet you are a nurturing, loving, caretaking human being that has a tendency to put everybody's needs before their own and kind of allows some poor behavior in your life because you either justify it, like you tell yourself, well, it's really not that bad. I'm probably being dramatic. I should be probably a little bit, if I was just a little bit more laid back, I would be okay with this. Or if your loved one or someone in your life breaks your boundaries, you try to fix it. So you take ownership and you blame yourself, and then you try to fix it for them, right? So if you are a person who says, I actually don't know what a boundary is, but I think I have an issue with that, then this is it for you. Today, I'm talking to you because a lot of people get confused about boundaries. They actually don't really know what they are. And the way I like to describe a boundary is a line in the sand. It's a line in the sand that if it's crossed, it's breaking a boundary. And your line in the sand represents it represents your morals or your values. So today I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions that are going to help you see what your boundaries are. And you need to be creative with this. You need to be honest. I always ask you to be honest with yourself about what is and what isn't okay in your life. You're going to have to be willing to let go of what your mom told you, what your dad's told you, what your best friend has told you, or your loved ones told you. This is about you being real with yourself and asking yourself, what am I okay with and what am I not okay with in my life? And then I'm going to give you an example of a poor boundary and a good boundary. And I'm even going to give you the words to say, to practice, because if there's one thing I know for sure, it is that boundaries take practice. And it is okay to fail in verbally communicating with them because they're difficult and we stumble. And that's part of the game, it's part of the gig, and it's completely normal. So let me start by asking you some boundary questions. And again, this is typically a 30-minute podcast. I have a whole program on the website that deals with boundaries. It goes into far more greater detail. It's like hours, and it's fun. Don't worry. It is not boring, I promise. But this is just like a high-level, brief boundary lesson, okay? So what are boundaries? We explained that there were lines in the sand, and they represent our morals and values. So if someone crosses our moral or value, then they've broken our boundary. For every one of you listening, your boundaries are going to be different. There's no right or wrong boundary. That's the beauty of it. Like if you told me one of your boundaries, I would have no judgment on what is or isn't okay with you because you're your own individual. And so, for example, how about if somebody raises their voice at you? Okay, so if your loved one or family member or whatever raises their voice at you, yells at you, is that breaking a boundary? Are you okay with that? Or are you the type of person where you're like, yeah, I don't mind if someone yells at me because I'll just yell right back at them, and we'll have a all-out, drag-out fight, and I can communicate effectively in that tone, and I can resolve issues in that aggressive type of manner. If you are the type of person where yelling like shuts you down, you literally go inside and you can't find the words to communicate effectively in that manner, you feel like somebody's is too aggressive and you just turn inwards and shut down, then that yelling might, or raising your voice as a style of communication, that might be a boundary. So if somebody starts yelling at you and you know you can't receive what they're saying correctly, you can't hear them, then somebody yelling at you would be a boundary that you have in place. I will not stick around if someone raises their voice or yells at me. Okay, that's a boundary. Now, let's stick with this example really quickly. A poor boundary about yelling would be if you say to your partner, I have a boundary where people don't raise my voice to me. A poor boundary would be, if you raise your voice to me, you need to leave the house. Well, that is a poor boundary because you are placing the action and the responsibility on somebody else. You are trying to control that other person when you are ultimately responsible for your boundaries. So you need to say, hey, I can't be around people who yell. I can't receive information in a healthy manner, and I can't process that. So if you raise your voice at me, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to shut down the conversation and I'm going to have to leave. That is a phenomenal boundary. Do you see the difference? You are controlling yourself, which is truly the only person you can control. And you are controlling your reactions to their poor behavior, which again is the only thing you can control. You are communicating without blame or judgment. You're just giving them a solid heads up, saying, hey, if this happens, if you choose to behave this way, that's your decision. You can raise your voice, you can yell if you need to get it out, but I'm not going to be on the receiving end to hear it. If you want to communicate with me, you need to communicate with me in a style that suits my needs. Does that make sense? Okay, so another boundary I want you to ask is, are you okay if someone exhibits like disrespectful behavior to you? What do I mean by that? I see this so often, that the one spouse is passively aggressive towards the other spouse. And this usually happens in public. So if you've been out with your partner and your partner sort of makes fun of you in a group or brings up something that, you're not doing well in a group setting, that is passive aggressiveness. Really, truly, in healthy relationships, when you are out in public, you together as a couple, your whole purpose is to have each other's backs. You're on the same team. You are not sitting there making fun or tearing down the other person. And I don't mean making fun in like a funny way. I mean in a hurtful way. And you guys know there's a difference. And I have seen this so many times in relationships and unhealthy marriages where they'll just snark at each other, right? And maybe you've been witness to this where you're like, ooh, that's uncomfortable. And it kind of like silences the table or silences the group. So if that's you, if you have been a victim of this, where every time you're out in a crowd or you're with a certain group of people or you're with family and your partner is putting you down or making fun of you in a passive-aggressive way, you need to ask yourself, is that okay with me? Am I going to continue to tolerate that behavior? Now, a boundary, if the answer is no, some of you might say, it's fine. I don't mind it. It's all like, it doesn't bother me. I don't care what those other people think of me and it doesn't hurt my feelings. Great. Then it shouldn't be a boundary for you. If it does bother you, if your partner does this, then you need to say, look, I don't know if you recognize that you're doing this or not, but you have a tendency when we're in a group of people to put me down and to belittle me or bring up things that are very personal that are embarrassing to me. And it makes me feel very uncomfortable and it makes me feel embarrassed. So let's go out one more time with the crowd, and I'm going to ask you nicely to please be aware of that and stop that behavior. But if you don't, then I'm not going to go out with you as a couple again until you can really figure out how to stop that behavior. Does that make sense? Again, it's a boundary that you're putting on your relationship by saying, I'm not going to be allowed to be treated this way, and I'm not going to be in the presence of you in a large group if this continues. Does that make sense? So you're basically saying you're taking control, and look, I know you might be like, well, wait, I love going out as a couple. I love doing those types of things. Well, if you really did love it, then that so much so, then that wouldn't bother you that much if your spouse did that to you. You can have side relationships with individuals. You don't have to always do things as a group with your spouse. Part of you learning independence and part of you learning how to stand on your own 2 feet and not be codependent in this relationship is learning how to do things without your spouse. Learning to go on vacation or go to church or go out with friends or pick up a hobby and not always needing your spouse next to you. Okay, another boundary is if your loved one has been cheating on you or you suspect they're cheating on you. Now, some of you might say, I know men who are okay with having suspecting that their loved one is cheating on them, but not looking for proof. I was one of those women, okay? So I am not judging you. If you want to have an open marriage or an open relationship, hey, that's your gig, right? No judgment here. But if you are one of those people and I wasn't one of those people that had an open marriage, I just want to clarify that. My ex-husband was cheating on me. I suspected it, but I kept my head in the sand. Let's just clarify that. But if you are bothered by the idea that they are sleeping or flirting or being with another person, and that's a boundary you have in place, you're like, no, I want loyalty. I expect the person that I love to honor me. Then that is a boundary. Infidelity is a boundary. Now, some of you might be going, Michelle, what about pornography? Well, what about pornography? I turn the question back on you and say, are you okay? Now, there's some couples that watch pornography together and they find that very fun. If that's you, great, cool. If you are the type of person where you're like, no, I actually find it incredibly humiliating and degrading to have my partner look at another person and get turned on by that on a movie. I would rather them do that with me or not at all. Then great. That's could be true for you too. Whatever you consider infidelity is right. This is about you honoring what's true for you. It's not about me sitting here telling you what you should or should not be okay with. Do you understand the difference? I am not, and nor should anyone in your life, nor expert or family member or friend, try to convince you of what is or isn't okay for you. You get to decide. You are a grown adult who has made it this far, and you get to decide your morals and values. And if you have no idea what they are, that's okay. Let's get you some alone time. And that's why this podcast is here, to ask you these questions, to take inventory and say, is this okay with you? So if cheating and infidelity is not okay, then here's the deal, all right? I want you, and I've said this before on another podcast, I want you to figure out if you suspect they are cheating on you. I want you to figure out if they are. You need to become Sherlock Holmes. You have every right and reason. If you suspect your loved one is cheating, you have every right and reason to confirm whether they are or they are not. You have a right to look through their phone. You have a right to look through bank records. You have a right to follow them if you think. Because if they are having an affair, and you say to me, Michelle, if I find out that my partner is cheating on me, guess what? Then that's a boundary. And if they are, then you are leaving. Don't you want to know? Wouldn't you care? Plus, your health is at risk. I mean, my ex-husband cheated on me with prostitutes for our whole marriage. And I had to go to the doctor and get a full checkup because I didn't know, because I put my head in the sand, right? I mean, your physical safety is at risk if they are cheating on you. You entered a marriage, a covenant of a relationship that is a committed relationship. So if you sit there and you go, well, I don't know, and I feel really invasive following him, or, checking out our bank statements to see if he's subscribed to any pornography websites, it's your right. It's your money. You have a family, you have a marriage. You have a right to know if they are crossing your boundary. So ask yourself, are you okay with them cheating or infidelity? What about this? Are you okay? Now, I'm going to get to a really popular boundary that I hear a lot in our secret Facebook group. Drinking in the house, using drugs in the house. This is where I see a lot of women get it wrong. And it's okay. I'm not saying wrong because I'm judging. I'm saying wrong because it doesn't work. All right. So if you sit there and you say, I hate it when he drinks in the house. I hate it when, I find her drugs or whatever in the house. A boundary, how do I say this? Okay. You cannot tell the person that you love that is using drugs or drinking too much, you can't drink in this house. You can't say that. That can't be a boundary, because they absolutely, if it's their house and unless you own the house outright, it's only in your name, you can't ask them to leave legally, right? So that won't work. What you can say, and I know this is going to be frustrating, I know you guys are going to roll your eyes at this because I did when I heard it. You can say, if you choose to drink or use drugs in this house, I'm leaving. I know it seems unfair, right? Because you're like, wait, why do I have to leave? They're the ones with the problem. It's true. They are. But you can't ask them not to drink. They'll look at you and go, oh, okay, I won't drink in the house. Fine. If they want to appease you and not fight with you, they'll say that. And then they'll hide their beer or liquor or their drugs, and they'll do it behind your back. You know that. They've done that before. So it's not a good boundary to implement. You can't drink or use drugs in this house. You can say, I'll leave. And you can leave temporarily or you can leave permanently. And I know a lot of you guys have kids. I had 3 very young kids, and I would have to load up the minivan and go to the park or go to the mall or try to find something, go to the zoo or try to find something to do with my young kids while he got wasted. And then hopefully by the time I returned, he was passed out and we didn't have to deal with him. Remember, you can only control yourself and your behavior and your actions. Boundaries don't work. This is an example of a poor boundary. Boundaries don't work if they are based on somebody else behaving a certain way and trying to control the other person, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So here's what I want you to do. Over the next week, I want you to sit down in a quiet spot, which, listen, for you moms out there, I get it. It might be us sitting, on the floor of the bathroom with a locked door. Cool, do that. It might be in carpool. Go 20 minutes early to pick up the kid in carpool and just sit down alone in your car. Whatever it takes, okay? Get by yourself. And I want you to make a list of your morals and values. So these are the things that honor you. In other words, What behaviors are you comfortable with in this relationship? And what behaviors go beyond your boundaries? And after you've made your list, it will become super, super clear when your loved one crosses your line, because you've identified what you are and what you are not okay with, okay? And when they have crossed your boundary, here's something you can say, and you can practice it, or you don't need to use it at all, and you can use your own words, but I'm just trying to help you out. You can say, you know what? I care how you're feeling right now, but I'm not going to tolerate your behavior. When you are ready to speak to me in a respectful, calm manner, I will be eager to listen. That specifically, that line is if somebody is disrespecting you, because when you implement your boundary, here's what I'm going to tell you is going to happen, especially when you love someone with addiction issues. They're going to fight back. They're going to hate that you've implemented a boundary because they are used to being in control. Addiction is used to controlling you. And when you start fighting for yourself, and you stop fighting for your future, and you stand up for yourself, and you give yourself a voice for the first time in a long time, and you're consistent about it, addiction feels threatened. And it goes, whoa, wait. I'm used to stepping on you. I'm used to controlling you. You're supposed to listen and believe me when I tell you, you're awful, or you're not worthy, or you're too little enough to deserve anything big, to keep you small. That is what addiction wants you to believe. And boundaries are the opposite. They're actually giving you a voice. They are a representation of you standing up for yourself, of you growing into a courageous human being that honors yourself. And so you're going to get pushback. I promise you, you will. And that's when you use that line. Let me repeat it. You say, I care about how you're feeling right now, but I will not tolerate your behavior. When you are ready to speak to me in a respectful, calm manner, I will be eager to listen. You are teaching your loved one how you are willing to be talked to. If you sit there and allow somebody to degrade you, you're teaching them that you are okay with it. By you stating that, you are standing up for yourself and saying, no more. I might have been that girl in the past. I might have been that man in the past, but you know what? I'm changing. I'm growing. I'm evolving. And it's not going to be that way anymore. Okay? And then the key is, after you deliver this line, I'm pretty sure they're going to make fun of you, or they're going to put you down even more, because now you're really standing up for yourself. And so the key is not to be on the receiving end. If somebody is literally yelling at you and abusing you verbally, the only way to get control of that situation is to disengage. If they are yelling at you and you're listening to it over the phone, or you're responding over a text message, or you're listening to it in person, you are literally telling them, I'm going to take this. You're going to yell at me and I'm willing to accept this. They will stop if you walk away or disengage, because they don't have an audience. You're removing yourself. And what are they going to yell into the air? Are they going to yell after you've hung up the phone? So what do? You disengage. You walk away, and if they follow you, which often happened to me too, you leave the house. You grab your keys, your purse, and you leave the house. Now, for some of you, your loved one is going to catch on to this mechanism. And it happened to me. My ex-husband used to grab my keys and my purse before I could, because he knew I was going to leave and he wanted me captive. And if that's the case, keep a spare key and a set of cash in a hidden area that you can go to in case they do that. Does that make sense? Part of outsmarting addiction is being prepared, and you need to be 3 steps ahead. You need to be 3 steps ahead of what you think the possible outcome will be, so that you always have an exit strategy, so that you are always calm and collected and in control of yourself. That is why in the Stay or Go program, we talk about having a bag, an emergency bag, always packed with all of your necessities, your paperwork, your clothes, your birth certificates, passports, whatever. Having that ready, because you never know. Addiction is unpredictable. So when you say this, you disengage. If they are disrespecting you or yelling at you or verbally abusing you over text message, guess what? You have a block. And I've had to do this with one person in my life where I've had to block them. And it's perfectly acceptable. It's saying, you're just a toxic human being. You're very unhealthy. And I don't want to engage with you anymore. I don't want to even know what you're saying because it's not doing me any good. So block them. You don't have to keep them blocked forever. You can just block them in that moment. And if they are emailing you, you can mark them as spam. I'm trying to think of any other ways they verbally. So in person, in text, and then obviously over the phone. Don't take their calls, or if they start to verbally abuse you while you're on the phone with them, you politely hang up and then you block them. And that's the key, guys. It's politely. Like, that's how we honor ourselves, by not yelling back at them and calling them all sorts of names and going out of control, because unfortunately, that just makes ourselves feel badly about ourselves. We feel gross after we've done that. We lose control. It is much more mature and responsible and a best practice to remain polite and in control. And that's why these lines are so important to sort of memorize and start practicing in the mirror or in the car, wherever you're by yourself, because you really want to be able to honor the best part of you, which is a dignified person who is polite and kind. That is who you are, right? You don't want to change and get down on their level. So you don't need to scream. And also important to say, when your boundaries get challenged, when they start making fun of you or yelling at you because they feel out of control, because you are now in control with your boundaries, you do not need to explain your boundaries. They don't need explanations. Why? Because here's the truth about boundaries. They typically are very, what's the word I'm looking for? They are universal. They are usually stem from a very healthy place that most grown adults, if not all grown adults, recognize. So if a boundary is, for example, cheating, right? Like you define cheating as, physical contact with another person. When you entered into a relationship that was one-on-one, whether it's marriage or just, you live together, it's a universal understanding that means you are faithful to that one person. It's assumed, right? It's assumed when you enter into a relationship that you are not going to name call, or you are not going to scream and degrade and yell at another person. It's assumed that you are going to be kind and nice, because that's the whole point of getting into a relationship. So you explaining that this is what you expect, it doesn't need to happen, because it's universally known. Most kids go to school, and in school, your teacher and your schoolmates help you grow into a person that understands that manners and kindness and love and respect are necessary. Now, addiction doesn't, right? Addiction is dark. Addiction is evil. And so addiction doesn't like those traits. Addiction likes lying and manipulating and disrespecting and manipulating. Addiction represents being sick. So you don't owe addiction, and we always talk about addiction as the third person in your relationship. There's you, there's the person you love, and then there's this mistress, this third party that's taking over your life, and that's addiction. You don't owe addiction any explanation. Addiction is smart enough to understand where you're coming from. You and your partner know. They're not stupid, and they're not four. They understand why you have these boundaries in place, and secretly, deep down inside, underneath all of the addiction, they probably respect you for it. And they're probably jealous because they wish they had those boundaries. Okay? So don't explain anything. Just implement your boundaries without apology and without explanation. And here's what will happen. If you practice this and you master this and you overcome your anxiety, which you will feel, and you will overcome your guilt, which you will feel, if you work through that phase and you stick with it, if you implement your boundaries and get masterful at it, which only can come from practice and failing a lot, here's what you're going to do. You're going to transform into feeling incredibly powerful, and you're going to feel, instead of hopeless and out of control, you're going to feel a huge sense of control. You are going to feel control over your life and yourself, which will give you a great sense of hope. And here's the beauty about it. If you follow through with this, you will feel powerful whether they get sober or not. Because this entire community, all of the programs, this podcast, the website, everything, the whole intention behind it is to teach you that your life and your feelings and your happiness and your joy and your courage can come whether they get sober or not. You are not dependent on their sobriety to feel better. You can actually feel the best you've ever felt in your entire life, and they can still actively be drinking and using drugs. It's about changing you, the changes you need to make in your life. And if we were being completely real with each other, which I strongly believe in doing, you know that you've needed to make these changes well before this relationship came into your life. It's true. You attracted this type of relationship and you tolerate this unhealthy relationship because it is your destiny and your calling to change yourself and your behaviors and your belief about who you are. You need to convert from saying, I don't deserve anything but crumbs, anything but dysfunction and chaos and drama and unhealthiness and abandonment. You need to make a shift into, I am absolutely deserving of the most wonderful partner who honors me, who loves me, who takes care of me, who sees me, who prioritizes me. But the problem is you got into this relationship thinking you didn't deserve that. I know I did. And so it's time that we work on ourselves. And when you start shifting, your life will shift along with it. And all of a sudden, you won't feel helpless and stuck. And the debate on whether you should leave or not will be silenced. And you will know exactly what you need to do because you will know exactly who you are. And you will know exactly what you want in your future. And you will believe in yourself enough to know that you will get it. But we have to peel through the layers, and that is a process. So, here's my call to action. You got to make a boundary list. If you are interested in diving deeper, I have a program on that. And if you tell me, Michelle, there's no way I can afford it, I have two things for you. Number one, if you really genuinely cannot afford, we give away our programs For every one that's purchased, we give away one for free. I absolutely refuse to accept the fact that people don't deserve help just because they can't afford to pay for it. That's no. But let me ask you another question, okay? If you're sitting there and you're going, yeah, I just can't afford it. I want you to look first at how much money is being spent on drugs and alcohol. Look at your bank account. If you are naive to where your money is going, please do your homework. Please find out. Because I think you will be astonished at how much it actually costs to go through life drunk or high or looking at pornography. It's a fortune. Add up all the DUIs, add up all the jail time, add it up and know that your therapy, your future, your desire, your dream is, wouldn't you rather fund that than their addiction? Wouldn't it feel so good to take money away from addiction to put it towards something that can actually change the trajectory of your life and make your family healthier and happier? And if that is the case, if you sit there and you say, well, I can't afford this program because addiction is costing me so much, I challenge that. Now, there are some of you out there, though, that really genuinely can't afford it. And please don't miss this opportunity. Get your help. These programs, I cannot tell you, they work. And there's nothing out there like them. And I promise I'm not saying, I say that and then I feel so guilty because I feel like I'm like patting myself on the back, which I'm not trying to do. But I've done all of the research for you. This is hundreds of books, hundreds of articles, talking to top experts, all condensed into actually what works and what doesn't. Because a lot of the crap out there does not work. We know this because we've tried it and don't see results. So this is only the best stuff that actually works. And it works for you. Again, I am not here. I make zero promises about whether this is going to help them get sober or not. It's not what it's about. Not at all. This is about you, helping you, getting you to let go of your addiction with them, getting you happy and healthy. Okay? So, in my final remarks, I always end podcasts in the same way, which is to remind you that I think you are freaking terrific. I think the fact that you are listening to this, and what we are into minute 37, if you are still listening to this, you have every single necessity inside yourself to get that life that you want. You stop listening to addiction and what it's trying to convince you that you are not. Don't you dare listen to that voice one more second, because it's full of lies and illness and sickness and manipulation. You are better. You are worthy. You absolutely need to believe in yourself, because I believe in you. And I know that you can get through this. And I know you can come out on better on the other side, because it happens every single day in our community. Okay? I love you. I am your greatest cheerleader, your biggest fan, and I've got you. This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with my personal thoughts and beliefs. We are bonded together by the fact that we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.